business downtime, it's a discussion that's not had enough, really. I think it is the first discussion, the first strategic discussion that any IT or managed services provider should be having with their customers, because it really helps align the customer and the IT provider into the same area. So I'm going to tell you a little story, and then I'll work our way back into how this applies and how you as a listener can leverage this yourself. So I met with a customer recently, and they had an outage. For them, it was disruptive, and they wanted to know how it never could happen again. And so in our discussions, the first thing I asked was, what does it cost you? What did that day of outage cost you? And there was a lot of thought and questions, and in the end, they had a number. And so we're going to use the number of $50,000 a day. Now, this is a larger organization, and so that's expensive. But any business that has downtime, it's very expensive, related to the size of their business. So once I knew that, I was able to then go back and start asking some really high-value strategic questions. So I said, well, do you want to get to the point where this is almost impossible to ever happen again? I said, right now you're at a good solution. It's never been down before. It's been 4 years that we've had it. Like, its uptime is really, really high, and it's still a really good solution. But are you looking for to bulletproof this so you don't have downtime? And the response was, yes, I want to do that. And I said, well, that's great, because I now have $50,000 that I can use to help you achieve that goal. And they said, where does this 50 grand come from? And I said, that's the cost of 1 day of downtime. That's what this event cost you. And so in this discussion, it could have gone several ways. The way I had hoped it would go was, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's have that be our budget to fortify and enhance our solutions so we don't have that weakness. It could also be that they say, wow, that's a lot of money. I'm not ready to commit to that yet. And in this situation, that was what happened. I didn't get a commitment out of this customer because they weren't prepared to recognize that although that hurt them for downtime and there was a cost and they were mad, they also have a part to play in this. And so it was really helpful for me to be able to navigate that discussion because we were temporarily out of alignment. And so using that number when you're discussing anything with your IT provider or your IT provider is discussing with you helps really realign that discussion and gets the strategy back on track. But let's pretend that this customer had said, yes, that makes a lot of sense. We have a $50,000 budget. So the next thing I said was, what is your recovery time objective? Which basically means how fast do you want to get back up and running from a disaster? And so that's the next strategic question that a quality IT provider asks. And so in their case, it was, well, initially 4 hours. And I said, okay, great. Once again, it's a number that we can use to get back up and running. And so we talked about 4-hour recovery time, which meant a fairly significant investment in the IT infrastructure at their office to be able to do that. And so I said, but I can do that with 50 grand. And they said, okay, that sounds great. Let's do that. And so, in this fictitious scenario, the customer buys the equipment and we fortify them. And we've had these two really high value strategic questions of, what does it cost you to be down? And what is your recovery time objective? So, as a small business owner or any business owner listening to this discussion, let's at least give you that downtime calculation so that you know what your bleed rate is. That's what we call the cost of the downtime for a day is how much you bled. So the downtime calculation is made up of 3 primary components. One is the total cost of your staff during that day. Number 2 is the total cost to just open the doors and keep the lights on from an operational standpoint. And then number 3 is the loss of potential sales revenue and profit that you would have generated that day. And so remember, if you push the profit into tomorrow, you've lost the opportunity to make it today. And so you always want to think of anything you didn't close on a sale today. It doesn't mean because you closed it tomorrow that it was, it's okay. You lost the opportunity to close it yet today or yesterday, and you may not have it again the next day. So yes.